let us jump into the news.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South America, and all the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press. Come on.
First up in game news, a fun little bit. There is a new board game reviewer, board game family that is joining the hobby, and they are called Our Family Plays Games. You can find them at Our Family Plays Games on Twitter. You can find Our Family Plays Games on Facebook. YouTube, exactly. They were featured on Good Morning America. They are a black family. They focus on lighter, more family fair games than what we cover. But Trey, did how many have you seen much of their YouTube?
Yeah, I've watched a couple of episodes, and they seem great for families and people that are just getting into the hobby and just wanted to kind of amplify them getting. They're probably already bigger than us immediately because they were on Good Morning America. They were there with some football player from, I don't know, some kind of awful football team that he used to play for.
Are you talking about the two-time champion Michael Strahan? Michael Strahan of the New York Giants? It's weird. The New York Giants have actually have a Super Bowl ring from each of the last 4 decades. Isn't that fascinating? It's weird. Anyway, it's given the last episode that we did, it is great to see more and better representation entering our hobby every day. And these guys seem like really awesome people, and
they knew their stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, they've played tons of games. They have that kind of library of stuff they can call upon. They're moving in on us in terms of like game sommelier and making recommendations.
No.
Although they did recommend Catan, so let's not get too excited.
In slightly less happy news, former employees have accused Cards Against Humanity of a racist and sexist office culture. In particular, they are calling out the co-founder Max Temkin, who not only designed Cards Against Humanity, but was one of the designers of Secret Hitler. And there is an article on Polygon. There's an article on Vox. The article on Polygon is quite a long read, actually. It really delves into the issue, and it was sad. It was sadly not a tale that I've heard for the first time. Not about him in particular, but people that foster a horrible workplace culture. They tend to follow the same tropes. They tend to go down the same alleys. And so if that's something that's interesting to you, I would seriously check that out. Me personally, I don't own Secret Hitler. I do own Cards Against Humanity, but I can't remember the last time I ever brought that thing out. And I don't think I'm liable to play those again. Guys, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, this is my shocked voice that Cards Against Humanity had a hostile workplace, and I'm not reluctant to pile on here, but maybe just because like I've always hated this game,
mm-hmm.
And it's been like it was hard to articulate exactly why I've always hated it. It was kind of like part of it is like it's a comedy game for unfunny people, but like when you were playing the game, you also like the way that it worked
mm-hmm.
with its kind of like edgy humor, when you actually got to like, well, what's funny about a lot of this is it's kind of like, well, we kind of like the humor was all based on, like, as the Vox article put it, we all know it's wrong, but we just can't help but indulge our racism just a little bit for a laugh. Like that was kind of the appeal of the game a lot of times. And I think that this is also kind of exposed that like the humor of the game, appeared to be for white people by white people, and that's part of the problem here with this game. And so it's not at all shocking that that's part of the culture of the company there.
Right. It's one of those games that a lot of times we would see cards when we tried to play it, and we'd be like, wow, that's really punching down. You know what I mean? And
it did feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's also like the thing is like Cards of Humanity bugged me because it is a game that is a gateway game for the hobby a lot of times. Like, it is often one of the first games that people play, like Catan.
Yeah.
And I always felt like this is a terrible ambassador for the hobby. Like, I certainly have had like moments where, like, we've known people from film school, Tom, who are like, oh, and they called me and said, we have a game night too, you should come. And I was like, great, it'd be great to see everybody again. And you walk in the door and like they want to play Cards Against Humanity and you want to leave.
Yeah.
You know, like, and part of that's that I'm a game snob, but part of it's also like I'm uncomfortable. Like, often you find yourself laughing in that game and you're like, I'm not sure I should be laughing in this game. What was funny about that?
Yeah.
If we actually broke down the humor, what was funny about that? And you end up kind of feeling gross at the end of it, or at least I did. So.
Yeah, I mean it's not every card. It's not every card combination. Some of them are,
Right.
are legitimately funny, and you know, a game that is humor for unfunny people is probably the only game that'll sell, because you know everybody thinks they're funny, but few enough people are that a game that only works for funny people isn't going to sell very well. So it is a kind of a catch-22 to some degree, but nonetheless, let's for a second just separate this and say, people have designed games that have nothing objectionable in them and have had horrible workplace problems
Right.
with their staff. So one does not necessarily equal the other. And you know, there have been a lot of authors recently, fantasy authors, sci-fi authors, that have been called to the carpet for horrific behavior. And you know, reading their novels, you would never have any idea that was going on. So,
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, it's just one of those things that I kind of dissociate the game and the workplace environment. Like, for example, like, I mean, Cards Against Humanity's big sell is that it's transgressive, right? Like, you know, yes, it's punching down to some extent, but it's ultimately marketing. It's going to be okay to do stuff that's a little taboo, right? I mean, that's why people kind of like have fun doing it, because like there's this stress of always having to. Well, I, as a non-white person, I assume this. And you guys can tell me that. You know, do you feel that, like, you know, there is a pressure to have to censor yourself at times? Like there's the what I should be and what I am. Is there a differential there? And I assume that the answer is yes. And I assume that this game here gives permission to explore that in theoretically a safe space. Now, I think that's not the best, right, but I think that's the actual, that's why people play it. You know, and at some like very microcosm level, there might be actually some therapeutic aspect to that. But like when you expand that, you know, it probably is not the best. Like I look at, when I read the article, which is very long, it seemed like, you know, here's this dude at the microcosm level, you know, would have been, I wouldn't say harmless, but like, you know, would have been fine. But because he became, you know, like a CEO, like, you know, in charge of this big company, he felt like the same behavior at the like really interpersonal microcosm level could be expanded. And that, and that, like, you know, there's a huge power differential between you as a person who is just hanging out with your friends versus now people are reliant upon you and reliant about being in your graces in order to eat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think there's a huge danger when your brand is transgression that is a massive trap that you could get sucked into, and it will suddenly magnify the worst behavior that human beings can have. I mean, I think of it this way. I think that if somebody says that they like Cards Against Humanity, I'm kind of like Trey. I'm like, I would rather not play that. But if you got to play that once, my red flag is the guy who is way too into Cards Against Humanity, right? That's where I'm like, okay, let me just jot that down in my little mental Rolodex and keep that in mind, because that sometimes that is the place where things get very telling sometimes. So that's where I'm from.
So
my question was, but Secret Hitler and Cards Against Humanity are not the same company. It's just that
No.
both were involved with Max Temkin. Like that's the commonality, right?
Correct. He was one of the designers on both games. In Cards Against Humanity, he was kind of the main card maker. He was the head honcho of the cards, which is the game, really. So you could say that he's probably more responsible for Cards Against Humanity than any of the other 8 people that were involved, probably. I don't know about Secret Hitler. I don't know exactly how involved he was, but I believe that there are 3 people that are credited with that game, and he's one of those. So you can do that math on your own.
Yeah, everybody has distanced themselves from Max Temkin at this point, though. I think. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
yes. Now, what does this say about Alfred, who loves Secret Hitler so much? Can we get into that?
I don't know if that's the best, but what I would say, he's good at it. But like, what I would say is like, I really hope there are no skeletons in the creators of Avalon, closet, because I would hate for Matt to come on the podcast.
Oh, that'd be the worst.
I'd like, oh man, see, I never liked that game. And the people who love that game, it just shows a failure in their person.
You know what Matt would be? Matt would be like, I knew it. I knew it.
I knew it.
Oh man! All right, let's move on before we flame any more of our friends. Trey, this is a special thing for you. It literally came up this week. I discovered this, and it is right up your alley. Ravensburger is having Game Inventor Days, July 10th and 11th. They're not going to be, heading around to the usual toy fairs for game inventors to present their ideas to publishers. So instead, they're going to be doing a virtual pitch session, I guess, via video call. They're, now Ravensburger isn't exactly the kind of games that you design, Trey, but don't you think that for people that are getting into the hobby, this is actually a really cool thing? It sort of lowers a barrier to at least pitch, and even pitching, even if it's not successful, it's always still pretty good practice. What do you think about this whole thing?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see if this becomes more the standard. Like, did COVID change things? I mean, COVID's going to change things for a lot of things about the gaming industry going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the sense I got looking at this was this is going to replace the kind of in-person meetings that happened at toy fairs.
Yeah. And
so, like, I imagine there was already a decent amount of layers and screening that went into, like, who gets a meeting at a toy fair with Ravensburger.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is going to be like an open call for game submissions. You have to apply,
mm-hmm.
and they're going to schedule a time. So
still gatekeeping then.
Yeah, but I'm sympathetic to that.
Sure.
But, I think that's a whole big subject of, like, when you're ready to take your game to a publisher, how do you go about doing that? And this, I think, is just an adjustment to, like, the industry continuing during COVID, but can't do what they would normally do.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm not saying gatekeeping in a bad way. I think for a publisher, they have to do that. So listen, we have all seen the same person at our local convention flogging the same game that he has for 20 years. Right. Trying to get it off the ground. The moment I see that, every time I see that, I completely understand how a company like Ravensburger should vet the people that are going to be pitching, because
Well, let me put it this way: like, what you don't want to do is, like, go to Gen Con, go on the floor, wander up to Zev at Z-Man and say, "I want to pitch you a game."
Right.
Like, that's
not how it works.
Not going to be appreciated, and they're there to sell product during the day. That said, if, like, there's plenty of publishers where you write them months in advance and say, "Hey, I'd like to show you this game. Where are you going to be? When can we meet up?" And they will often tell you, "We're going to have a suite at Gen Con where our head of development is going to be, scheduling some times. Why don't can you come by at Thursday at 8 a.m.?" And, like, I've done that with Jamie at Stonemaier Games, and I showed a card game to Indie Card Games before. Like, that's how they want to do it. And so listen to Ravensburger when they're telling you this is how you can access us.
Yeah, I was your stooge at one of those presentations, if you remember.
Oh.
Yeah,
thank you for being my stooge.
I was happy to be your stooge. I was the guy. Explain how this works. Oh, I think I'll do this as we.
Yeah,
as we
you're super helpful, Tom.
I think it was for Seth Jaffe, friend of the pod, Seth Jaffe. So I'm not sure that was.
So that would have been. Oh, wait, was it with Steph? With
Oh no, I don't think it
Tasty
was.
Minstrel?
I don't think
No,
it
I think
was.
it was
Tasty
Indie
Minstrel.
Cartoon Games.
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yeah. Anyway, I've definitely demoed it with Seth, with Seth as well, but he already kind of knew the game anyway, so that was not something particularly new. Anyway, if you are out there and you are like Trey, if you are a aspiring game designer, or like Trey, a actual game designer, you should take a look at this. Ravensburger.de. Investor Days is what you're looking. Inventor Days, I'm sorry, is what you should look at and take a look at it. Maybe that is going to be the first step in your journey to game design greatness. We got some great things that are shipping right now and arriving in people's houses. Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion is in stores right now. Imperial Struggle, people are getting their. I don't think they're getting shipping notices. I think they're just getting that wonderful surprise package at the door. Smartphone Inc. got my copy of that just the other day. So a lot of games we've been really looking forward to. They seem to all be coming in at once, which is pretty cool. Moving on, we got to talk about a game called Role Player. Role Player was a game in 2016. We've mentioned it maybe 2 or 3 times on this podcast before. It began as a fairly small box, little simple game. The idea was it was a dice placement, dice drafting game in which you were trying to build a player character. So essentially, it took the character creation part of Dungeons and Dragons and turned that itself into a game. And it was a pretty decent puzzle for what it was. It wasn't, it wasn't super deep, it wasn't super amazing, but it was pretty good. The reason I'm bringing it up now is that they have continued to iterate on this. Cartographers did a spin-off of it in 2018. They did an expansion called Monsters and Minions, which added monsters and minions. And now in 2020, our friend Candace Harris is reporting that they're introducing another expansion called Fiends and Familiars, which, yeah, it introduces Fiends and Familiars. If you understand how the game works, these are just adding other little sideboards to your main board that you can also place dice on. And when you complete those, you're unlocking special powers, special abilities. That's essentially what it is, which is pretty cool. But they also have a Role Player Adventures game that is coming out this year, which seems this one is a bit more. This is less of an expansion and more of a new direction for it. Basically, it turns the role player system into an actual kind of cooperative storybook game. 1 to 4 players in the world of Role Player, and you're playing out adventures, which, for a game that started off as one thing, as just the character creation process as a game, I thought that was really, really good. Then when they started expanding it and the character creation starts to deal with monsters and deal with other sorts of things, I thought that was okay. That was interesting. I wonder if the design is going to suit itself when it goes this far, when it really sort of takes the very simple concept and essentially kind of seems like it becomes almost like D&D itself. Well, so we'll see. Anyway, that's.
And you guys ever play Mage Knight?
Oh yeah, Vlada Chvátil, yeah.
I feel maybe this when I see this game, like normally a game like this, like pre-COVID, is a game where Matt would like one day give me a call on a Sunday or something. Hey, I got a new game. You want to try it out? And I'm actually really looking forward to playing all of this. Like I have yet to, but it just seems like this would be something in that pocket.
Maybe, yeah.
You would be the one to get that call, right? Because this is a dice. This is the dice game. I'm not getting that call.
No, it's going to be Paul and Jake are going to be called up, and they're going to come over and they're going to try this thing out.
Are there neoprene mats to go with all the multicolored dice?
I don't know. I know that in the original Role Player, it's a fairly simple game. I quite liked it actually. I didn't like it enough. It wasn't meaty enough for me to click buy and to pick it up. But I actually really did enjoy my one play of it. So. Moving on. Back to the Future has another game out. This is not a Prospero Hall design. This is a design by Ken Franklin, Chris Lader, and Kevin Rogers. put out by Ravensburger, and it's called Back to the Future: Dice Through Time. And
I'm going to surprise you here, Tom.
tell
I
me.
own this game.
What?
Wait.
I bought it by mistake.
This is the one you bought instead of the Ravensburger one? Instead of the...
I ordered it through Target thinking I was getting the Prospero Hall game. And instead I got the Ravensburger game. Because the Prospero Hall game isn't out yet, I don't think.
No, I didn't think it was, which is why I was surprised when you told me that you'd got that. Yeah, Trey went... well, you know what? In Games on the Brain, tell us about your Prospero Hall. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So you got this one. Did you look at it yet?
I looked on it and saw that it was the dice game, and then I clicked return on the Target website.
Well, I'm gonna say it's not. It doesn't look that bad. It's kind of interesting. It's a cooperative game. There are different time streams, so there are different years, and you have to. You're trying to get the right objects into the right time frames and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, there are events in these times, and they're kind of building up. And the cool thing to the game is that you have these dice that you can use. But you can also leave dice in time. It's basically essentially one of those things like, you remember in Bill and Ted's Adventure at the end, they say, oh, let's remember to leave a key here, or let's remember to do this, and we'll go back in time and change that. And, all of that time trickery stuff is actually played out in the game by leaving dice. You're essentially leaving things for other people and manipulating time in that way. It doesn't sound terrible. It actually sounds kind of interesting, for a cooperative game. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll do a future Back to the Future head-to-head game review of these, because I think both of these games I think were supposed to be pretty good for 2, and Jenny is a big Back to the Future fan, so that was kind of my reason for getting these games.
Sure. You might be surprised. This might end up being a good game. So we'll see. Unmatched, Unmatched has a new expansion, Cobble and Fog. Unmatched, if you remember, we've talked about it a few times on the podcast, is a 2-player or 4-player skirmish game, little miniature fighting game. Very small, very tactical, really interesting range system based on the colors of the board itself. And most of the expansions for Unmatched, and most of the games of Unmatched, are using public domain characters to, basically reduce their cost and all that sort of stuff. And this is no difference than that. You can play the Invisible Man, you can play Sherlock, you can play Dracula, or you could play Jekyll and Hyde. So if you like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, guess what? Unmatched has a game for you. And then last but not least, in the news, Poetry for Neanderthals. The fabulous people at Exploding Kittens have put out a new game that I may have to get because, okay, so
yes, we must get this game.
Must get game
with one word.
Yes, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you about it. But first, so Exploding Kittens, not really my bag. But then they came out with this game called Throw Burrito, which my brother and his kids bought. And we spent a long weekend up in Tahoe with them, and all we were doing for half of the weekend was throwing these rubber burritos at each other. It was so fun and so funny and so delightful that when I saw this game, I was like, okay. Poetry for Neanderthals has a blow up club that you blow up, and
this is for you, Paul.
And yes, somebody holds the club over your head, and you are given a word. And you have to get your teammate to guess the word or words on your card. But the trick is you're a Neanderthal, so you can only say words that have one syllable. That's it. Never more than one syllable. If you say more than one syllable, you get the stick. So if you had Tyrannosaurus Rex, what would you do? How would you do Tyrannosaurus Rex?
This game hard.
Sam Neill film, green big teeth. I don't know, maybe.
Small arm, big teeth.
Yes.
Oh,
Small
good.
arm, big teeth. There you go. Yeah, scales. You could do that. Yeah. So,
run. Yeah, it sounds like fun.
Thagno like this. Thagno like this.
Yeah, it's taboo, right? It's basically taboo.
Yes,
except with a twist. Taboo with a twist.
Yeah. And
inflatable club.
Yeah. And unlike Taboo, Taboo, you can, Taboo makes you sound, all of these games are based on speech restriction, right?
Yep.
What you can't say. But Taboo, the speech restrictions are smart and clever, but they don't create they don't create a particular
flavor
aesthetic.
Flavor.
Yes, exactly.
This is LARP Taboo.
This
Caveman
is
LARP Taboo.
It very much is. It very much is.
It has a great trailer. Like, it's a minute trailer. I watch it. I go like, oh, if this were there's a price point where I would buy this, like, sight unseen, because the trailer is so tight.
It's $20, $19.99 is what it costs. I think they found my price point. I think they found my price point.
They
I
have
think
a good batting average. So this is Alon Lee.
Yeah.
Is behind Exploding Kids. Although I don't think they put a designer. At least I couldn't see one on the box or on BGG. But
I'm glad you mentioned that.
There's a team there. Yeah.
Yeah, their games are actually surprise. For that party kind of silly game space, they're surprisingly decent. These games are not just money making enterprises. There's a decent amount of thought that goes into them. So maybe you should check those out.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.